just thought it would be lovely to be with Quakers for a whole weekend. Always have that atmosphere of calm and peace.
What I'm really looking forward to about the weekend is the opportunity to spend time with people, time where we can hear each other's stories and each other's experiences, and where we can open up a bit of discussion perhaps around issues that maybe are quite personal for people or they haven't felt comfortable being able to talk about before, or talk about in a religious context. So I come from evangelical church background before becoming part of a Quaker meeting, and there it was very difficult to talk about anything around LGBTQ identity or gender diversity, so this feels like a really good opportunity perhaps to open up some of those issues, listen to each other and understand each other a little bit better.
I think it's one thing for Quakers to pay lip service to something and say yes, 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 we go along with same-sex unions, marriages, partnerships. It's another thing to actually take it on board, and I think this is what is happening here. Is there are some cisgender people here who are actually taking it on board and learning, and I think that in itself is applaudable.
Equality. So I might introduce myself by saying I'm Sarah, my pronouns are she and her, I'm a lesbian, sometimes I use the word gay. Sometimes I would say I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. I might say that I'm a woman or that I'm cis. And those are just some of the labels, some of the words that I might use to describe myself. What about you, Leslie? What kind of word cocktail might you use to talk about yourself?
Well, I like to call myself Leslie, actually.
But I do want to know what all these terms mean. And I would love them to produce a little booklet about it, but as Leslie said, the meaning changes all the time.
I'm not a transvestite in the sense that I don't switch into women's clothes occasionally, but all the time I'm dressed as a woman. But I haven't had surgery or hormonal treatment because I regard myself as half and half, well, actually a bit more male than female, and it's something that I hid from my parents a great deal, and then as I grew older I started to come out to my wife and children, friends. I'd still hide it an awful lot. It was only 4 years ago that I finally went down to the supermarket by myself in women's clothes. Because, of course, once you do that, everybody in your town knows rather a lot. So I am non-binary in the sense that I don't belong to either the male or the female gender. So it's very complicated, and there isn't a single sort of pattern, except that this is about my gender, and I was misgendered when I was a child, and I am finding the gender that I really belong to. And for some people, this is a journey.
I spend quite a bit of time working in schools and working with young people, and I find it really striking as someone who was in school in the 1980s and 90s when Section 28 was in force, which meant you couldn't really talk about LGBTQ identities at all, where there was a real kind of climate of silence. Actually now going into schools, it's really exciting to see that young people are much more comfortable talking about identity, thinking about difference and expressing themselves and asking questions.
I think, can I just say about pronouns?
Yes, this is what we were hoping to get.
Pronouns, I know that people are sort of, oh, have I done the wrong thing? I make mistakes as well, because the particular place where it's very, very hard to use the correct pronoun that the person wants is in a family where somebody grows up and they transition, and of course the parents find it very hard to switch the pronoun if that's what the person is asking for.
Generally, I'm a big believer in quite an old-fashioned value, perhaps, which is like being polite and being courteous to people. So if it is helpful and courteous to somebody to introduce yourself using your pronouns or put them in your email signature, to me that feels like actually finding it's a way of being kind, it's a way of being polite.
I must say that for many people, they have been misgendered by pronoun for the whole of their lives, and despite saying it to people, people continue to do it. And when people continue to do it on email or face to face, then it starts to feel as if it's deliberate.
Well, I think woke is a joke. I think it's a way to disparage people that are open to change, kind, and willing to work with those parts of society that are marginalised and oppressed. So if that's a badge I have to wear, then I'll wear it.
So for me, I think it's being brave enough sometimes to say to people, how would you like me to address you? Whereas I think we probably have a tendency to think we ought to know.
I was excited when I heard that Ryan was willing to run a weekend. The subject came up at yearly meeting last year, and I thought it'd be really good to have it as an area meeting subject.
Hello everybody, my name is John. I'm from Bedford meeting. One of the things that I should say right at the beginning is I am 75 years of age, so to get my life experience into 10 minutes. I always say my biggest claim to fame was that for the first 20 years of my life I was technically illegal. But I'm the eldest of 5. I mean, I remember having an absolutely silly thought of wondering whether policemen could tell whether you were gay or not and whether they'd arrest you. I was brought up in the Church of England and then the Methodist Church, and eventually just felt the need to leave because you didn't feel accepted. And then eventually we did begin to talk about it, and that was very hard, and perhaps still is sometimes. So for me, I struggle sometimes to understand some of the issues for trans people, but I think I understand very much what it's like to feel different and to be treated quite negatively.
I admire the courage of people who were able to speak about their experiences.
The 4 speakers this morning was very moving.
I think what's come out of it for me so far is we need to listen and follow the lead of our young people rather than feel that we know the answers and we can take it forward ourselves.
I was very moved by what I heard. People's stories, conflicts within families to start with, and then the acceptance and how wonderful the acceptance is. It's just about loving one another, whatever our journeys.